and welcome to How to Deal When the Shit Gets Real podcast. I'm Rietta.
And I'm Connie, and today we are joined by Amy Cotta. Now, Amy, how do you deal when shit gets real? Or really just tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
That's like the $1 million question, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's why we're here. Sorry.
You ladies literally have the best podcast name ever.
That was me.
Oh, thank you.
Like, I was like, why didn't I think of that?
Thank you. We love it.
So, yeah, like you said, my name is Amy Cotta. Like, I caught a cold or caught a cheese. And I am the founder and executive director of Memories of Honor. We are a national military nonprofit based out of Franklin, Tennessee, which is about 15 minutes south of Nashville. And our mission is to make every day Memorial Day. We believe very strongly that our fallen service members and their families deserve to be honored, recognized, and remembered more than just one day a year. Throughout the year, we create living, breathing memorials. We use everything from sports, entertainment, to special events to make sure that those men and women's names and lives are never forgotten.
That's beautiful.
As somebody who's married to a service member, it gives me all the feels. I love it.
You know, it's the least we can do. You know, as individuals or as community as a whole, we don't have any way to physically take away the pain of loss for these families or to fill that void. If we could, I would, but that's impossible. But what we can do is bring them some comfort and some peace and knowing that their loved ones didn't die in vain, no matter the cause of passing. You know, as a mom I'm a mom of 6, but also as a mom of an active duty Marine, that was my worst nightmare, the thought of losing my son. And, you know, we're just doing what I would hope that somebody would do for us if the circumstances were different.
And we actually just interviewed a Gold Star widow, and she talked about that, like how the community and the support and being able to ask for help was such a huge difference in her coping and her healing process.
Yeah, you know, it's something that none of us could ever really wrap our brains around. It's like one of those things where we can be empathetic, but until you actually walk and live in that person's shoes, you know, you don't know what it's like. So we try to make sure that everything we do is with the greatest intentions of bringing comfort and peace. And, you know, I always say mission first and then do no harm. So that way we're not unintentionally causing any more pain than has already been suffered.
Those are 2 great models to have for sure.
So what inspired you to create your nonprofit?
Oh my gosh, how much time do we have?
However long you want to talk, we're here.
It was very, very unintentional. So I'm an entrepreneur at heart, but I never, you know, I've incubated businesses out of like the Nashville Entrepreneur Center, and I've owned other businesses. But I didn't say, oh, you know, I'm going to start a nonprofit and here's my business model and here's my business plan and let's go out and execute. When I hit about 40, I was 39, turning 40. That's when shit started getting real. And I was learning that there was more in life than just what I wanted, or it shifted from me to we. And that's another whole story for another time. But a lot of my family members had been hit with cancer, and I lost a couple, and I decided to stop living in the, oh, what can I not, you know, what I can't do, or, oh, poor me, I want to do this, but I'm afraid to. And so that was the first pivotal moment in my life. The second was the day that I signed my then 17-year-old son over to the Marine Corps. Now, I always knew that this kid was going to go in. He was a child of 9/11. You know, he was old enough to know what was going on and what was happening. And, you know, from that point on, he had always dreamt of going into the military. And he spent all 4 years in JROTC. He was also part of the Raiders team. So I knew he was going in, right? Like I had all this time to prepare and I was okay with it. Our family, we are a military family. Almost every man in my family, both sides, has served at some point, and including my ex-husband, my dad. I had uncles and cousins that fought during Vietnam, World War II. Our family goes back to the Civil War. But the day that he came home and said, hey, I don't want to go into the Army, I want to go into the Marines. And I know enough to know the Marines are the first ones in. It's 2011. We've been losing just the casualty count has been huge. And I knew people that had lost loved ones. But about that time is when things started shifting a little bit and we started losing more here at home on American soil than we were losing overseas. And I knew people that had lost loved ones after coming back home. And so I was sitting in the recruiter's office, and I'm not a shy person. I'm usually pretty vocal. I'm usually pretty outgoing. Even in uncomfortable situations, I'm the one to tell a joke to break the ice. And I literally could not speak. I knew if I tried to speak, I was going to like break down. His recruiter did a really, really good job of being open, honest. And he said to me, ma'am, it's not a matter of if or when your son's going to deploy. It's going to be where and how often. Like I'm already like getting choked up. And those words sat on me like an elephant of, oh my God, what am I doing? Don't sign these papers. Make him wait. Make him sign them himself. Because selfishly, I didn't want that on myself. Because part of my brain was going, oh, what if he gets in and he hates it? And then, Mom, why didn't you stop me? Why didn't you tell me not to do it? And then all of a sudden, the worst thing happened. What if something happens to him? What if he dies? Am I going to be able to live with myself? And the answer was no. That there was no way I was getting over that, and that my son's blood was going to be on my hands. And I hope that doesn't spark or trigger anything into anybody that has unfortunately that has walked that themselves. And I didn't even think about that until I said it. So I apologize. But that's where my head went. And my hands were shaking while I was signing that contract for him. And I thought, okay, that's done. We've got until November for him to leave. Well, not my kid. They said, hey, does anybody want to go early? And by the way, it's going to be open contract. My kid said, oh, take me. And literally about a month after graduation, I was putting my kid on a bus and knowing that if he gets in trouble, no matter what it is in his life, military, non-military, I'm not going to be able to be there to help him. Not that he needed my help, but that's the instincts of a parent.
Yeah, that's a mom instinct.
Right? And people would tell me all the time, oh, just wait until you send your kids off to college. It's the hardest thing ever. Now I know, because I've sent kids off to college too. Now I know you take that feeling of separation, that feeling of anxiety, that feeling of just helplessness, and you pour rocket fuel on that, and you light a match and you throw it on that sucker. And that's what it's like to possibly be sending your child off to war.
Oh, yeah.
And it crushed me. It was the proudest and hardest damn day of my life.
Not that it matters, but is he your baby? I'm just curious, is he your youngest?
No, he's not. So he was my, well, yes and no. Tyler was my youngest from my first marriage. And then I had a huge gap between ages of children. So yes, he was my baby. When Tyler was born, I've only have talked about this a couple of times, and I'm not going to cry, but when Tyler was born, he went into fetal distress, and I almost lost him during childbirth.
Oh no.
Signing him over and then putting him on that bus was reliving all of that. Don't take him, not now.
Yeah.
Just came, all that trauma I had forgotten about came flooding back in. So when he did leave, when he was on the bus and he was gone, I had this feeling of loss. I didn't lose him. He was still alive, but and I'm not trying to compare my separation anxiety by any stretch of the imagination with true loss, but it was as close to that as you could get without actually losing somebody. Like, I went to a deep spiral depression, and it had gotten to the point where if somebody just mentioned his name, I couldn't speak. I'd start crying. We'd be at dinner and I'd be crying. I'd be driving down the interstate and I would just be ugly crying. And it was because I didn't want to lose him again. Even though I didn't lose him the first time, again, I was reliving all of that trauma from childbirth, and it sucked a lot.
Wow.
Sounds like it. I mean, that's got to be rough.
Yeah, it wasn't much of a cakewalk, but
it got real, right?
Shit did get real. But it gave me a microscopic glimpse into the world of what it must be like for those that have lost their loved ones, and especially for those poor moms and dads that have lost their child, and for some of them it was their only child. So while Tyler was gone, I had a pair of combat boots. They were steel toe Marine Corps combat boots. So I had them from another military nonprofit, from a fundraiser. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to start wearing those boots. So I started wearing them everywhere I went. It was in the middle of July. I'm out walking in shorts and combat boots. We would go to more of a dress up cocktail party. I was in a dress and combat boots. Shortly thereafter, there was a 5K within basically jogging distance from my house. And I wasn't a runner. And I had severe IT band syndrome for years of mountain bike racing. So I laced up those boots and I went and I did the 5K. And like, this beautiful thing happened. Like, people would tap me and I'd take out my earbud, or, my headphone, and they would ask me, why was I running in the boots? And I would tell them, I just put my son on a bus and he's in the Marine Corps. And they would either cry with me, or they'd have a moment where they would thank me, or they would tell me, these are brief encounters, but they would tell me, my son or my husband or whomever, served too, thank you. And then 2 weeks later, there was a women's half marathon in downtown Nashville. Now, this was the 4th half marathon I've paid for. I've never showed up to a starting line, because I always wanted, that dream of, I'm going to be a runner and I'm going to do a half marathon, but I never had the courage to show up. And not only did I show up to that event, I was in my combat boots and I filmed all of it. I taped it because I talked to Tyler along the way as I was filming it. The most amazing thing happened was that as I was starting to suffer, it was like armor falling off of me. It became a form of therapy. But prior to that, I told my husband, I said, I don't want to, but I'm going to have to go get some help. I'm going to have to get on medication or something, because I don't like being the way that I am right now. So those boots became my medication. And the more I suffered, the more I healed. I quickly noticed that it wasn't just for me. Early on, I was doing those events for myself. They were selfishly for me. They were for me to feel connected to my son. They were for me to burn off the crazy. But eventually other moms, other dads, people were reaching out to me because of Facebook starting to, really gain popularity. And I was sharing my experiences and photos, and my inbox started filling up of, my son's leaving for boot camp. I need something. I'm so desperately depressed. Where do I get boots? I want to do something too. So eventually I went from doing 5Ks to half marathons to 50Ks. I added a much bigger pack, more weight to the pack, whatever I could do to up the ante, to make it a little bit crazier, to let other people know that it was okay to A, get outside of their comfort zone, to B, say screw fear or screw what anybody thinks. I'm doing this for myself. I figured if I could do it at 40 something and with bad knees and 6 kids, anybody could do it. One of my girlfriends, I'm good friends with her and her husband. He's a medic, and he had lost 13 teammates. And I know how much he suffered. There's two or three different anniversaries between the 13. I wanted to do something to try to take away some of that pain from him, or to give him something. And the only thing I could think of was to start running in honor and memory of his teammates. So I reached out to him and I asked if he thought that the families would be okay with it. So he reached out to them individually and got the okay. And so I added photos of those 13 fallen service members on my pack. So now every time I went out and did a race, I also had those photos for everybody to see, honor, and to remember. At one point, one of the moms had reached out to me, Tara, and Tara had said that her son, Anthony, always wanted to do an Ironman someday. But Anthony was never given that honor and privilege of doing that because, unfortunately, he was killed in action. He was only 24 years old. I told Tara right then and there, I just learned how to swim, but I'm going to do an Ironman for Anthony. And when I'm telling you, I just learned how to swim, like I literally had just gotten to where I could put my face in the water, without panicking. And long story short, I went out and I did the inaugural Ironman Chattanooga. And during the run portion, I once again was in my boots, the pack, the photos, and I had the full support of all the other athletes, the full support of Ironman. At that point, I had 21 fallen photos on my pack because God, the universe, whatever it is you're comfortable with. For me, it's God. God kept putting people in my life that had lost somebody. So I had 21 at that point. And about a week after the race, I was sitting here in my office and I was writing a handwritten letter to Tara to tell her, thank you. And I'm sorry, I'm trying not to get choked up.
Right.
What an impact Anthony had on me. And even though I never met Anthony, I never had that privilege. His life for me, for us, for my family, for our children, is still all these years later impacting people that he never met. That was another pivotal point in my life of, I've got to keep going. I've got to keep doing more. And I had reached out on Facebook asking if anybody else would be willing to donate a medal for Kristen. Her brother was a high-ranking Marine. He was also on my pack. And at that time, we didn't have boosting posts. There wasn't Facebook ads. It was just on one of the groups. And I thought I was going to get heckled because I know how much training, and these medals are like Olympic gold medals to those that have earned them, because you're spending at least a year away from your family, of 15 to 30 hours a week of just grueling, painstaking training. And to my surprise, not only did not anyone heckle me, but within a matter of 2 hours, I had enough medals for all 21 service members.
Oh,
And I was
incredible.
I was turning medals away. Oddly enough, I didn't realize it until later, but the day of the Ironman was actually Gold Star Mother's Day.
No, it was meant to be.
Yeah, it wasn't intentional. And, people that had saw what I did and the other racers that were there, they wanted that. They wanted to be able to impact somebody's life. So it grew grassroots. And the same thing with the families. Family members started posting pictures of medals that not only myself, but other participants were out earning in honor and memory of their loved one. They were wanting somebody to honor the memory of their loved ones. So when we first started, Memories of Honor was actually called Medals of Honor, because that was just a Facebook page name that I came up with. And it was because you're you're giving your medal in honor and memory of someone's fallen loved one. So it was organic. It wasn't planned. It was just something that happened. And I cannot imagine using my life to do anything else.
What a great story, and how it just
It
all
really
kind of
is.
came together for you. Like you can't, like you said, you can't ask for a better
Can't
like
make this shit up.
accumulation. Yeah.
Yeah, it's it's one of those things where when you find your purpose in life, and if you're brave enough to not, to boldly go and, and not care what somebody may be snickering at you about. Because for me, I mean, I'm not a fast runner. I'm not a fast cyclist. I had just learned how to swim. I am the typical non-athlete. Now, I always looked like an incredible athlete because in my younger days, I was a professional fitness competitor. So I always had the look, but, I wasn't a great athlete. And, I had to get over those voices in my head of, oh, there goes Amy, she's going to be bringing up the rear again. I didn't care because I wasn't
We're still
out there.
there.
Right. I wasn't out there for myself. It wasn't ego. It wasn't about me. And it never has been, and it never will be. And so I hope that if whoever is listening to this is maybe that's resonating for them. You know what? Do not give an ounce iota care to what anybody may say, think, feel. That if something's tugging in your heart, that you feel a calling, run after it with all you've got, or in my case, shuffle after it, because my running ugliest, slowest shuffle you've ever seen, but it's okay because it's not for me. It's not about me.
That's so funny, Amy, because my first and only, I think it was a 5K. I don't remember. It's my first and no, it's not my only. So it was one of my first ones. I was pulling up the back and I had a cheer section, which was absolutely hilarious because it was like one of those obstacle courses.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're following behind you, making sure like no one's getting hurt and that things are getting like cleaned up, and they're cheering me on. It was hilarious. Sorry, quick story. It made me think of that.
No, like the party's in the back, right?
Yeah,
like,
it's fine.
Yeah, my husband always jokes when they go to do stuff like that with their 80-pound packs and they're out in the mountains and around. He calls those nature walks, and I'm like, that's no nature walk any normal person goes on. But if that's what you want to call it.
Well, think about it too, like taking a civilian, which I am, and getting other civilians to literally walk, run, shuffle a mile or more in a situation that's nowhere near what your husband is going through when he's training, right? Or nowhere near what it's like on the battlefield. But knowing, oh my gosh, lacing up boots and running in boots is no joke. Oh my gosh, a 15-pound pack, that's no joke. Yeah, imagine doing it in those boots, 80 pounds just in your pack alone. That's not including any of your other, your whatever kind of firing device you have, rifle or whatever, and you're dodging bullets. Yeah. Like it gives you a different perspective on what not only the training that it takes to get them there, but the mental capacity to go, okay, this really hurts, this really sucks, but you compartmentalize it, and you don't pay attention to that pain anymore because you're focused on the mission. And in my case, the mission is getting to the finish line. I think it's amazing. Like I'm a big, huge fan and instigator when it comes to suckering people to do things outside of their comfort zone. And if I can get them in a pack and a pair of combat boots, all the better.
Yeah. One thing that I do every year, well, it actually has changed. I used to, every year on Memorial Day, I would go up to the crosses at Camp Horno on Pendleton, which is where there's a huge memorial for a bunch of fallen soldiers. So I used to hike up there every year. And that was the same thing. I tell myself, like, no matter how hard this hike is, it's nothing compared to what these guys who have lost their life has done. And since I can't hike to the crosses anymore, I do Murph every year. I do the Murph WOD for Lieutenant Mike Murphy. And it's the same thing. It sucks, but it's nothing compared to what these guys do. So I'm like, I'm just going to put this pack on. It'll be worth it.
Yeah, that first half marathon I did, my knee started acting up about mile 7. And you got to remember, I did not train for this. And I'm in these big old heavy steel toe boots. But my knee lasted a lot longer than I thought. About mile 7, it started hurting. By mile 21, the wheels were falling off the bus. And I was having to go up 2nd Avenue in Nashville. Now, anybody that's ever ran up 2nd Avenue in Nashville, you know Nashville is not flat. Yeah. And it is a hellacious hill. And by that point, I was dragging my leg behind me. I was kind of doing like, I call it the Quasimodo. And by time I got over to the other side of the river, which is where Nissan Stadium is, and going back over the pedestrian bridge. The pedestrian bridge is shorter, but oh my God, it's steep. And I had what was probably 80-year-old women patting me on the back, going, "It's okay, honey, you can make it." I was ugly crying. I had snot coming out of my nose. I was wincing in pain every step. But there was no way in hell I was stopping or giving up, because I wasn't out there for myself. I was out there for my son. Mm-hmm. And there's so much pride and so much freedom in going to places that you would never take yourself for yourself.
The strength of mind over body once you actually do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like if everything that we did in our lives, if we did it with purpose, making an impact in other people's lives, oh my God,
the world would be a better place.
Oh my God, the shit we could get done, and just how much better everything is if we all just stopped talking and got up and moved and did something. What, even if it was digging ditches or digging wells, doing something.
Yeah. I actually just finished reading a book. It's called Lovability, and he was talking about how if we would just lead everything with love instead of judgment or hate or criticism or whatever, like how different the world would be. So it's kind of the same concept.
Love that. I'm gonna have to read that.
It's a great book. And kind of piggybacking off of your Memories of Honor, how did Memories of Honor add on valor bands and wearable gratitude? Where did that come from?
So that first year when I was just being an aggregate, right, for bringing families and athletes together, I had quit my job. So we went from a 2-family income down to 1. We still had 4 or 5 kids. I don't know. I lose count. We have so many kids. We still had a house full of kids. So for that first year, all money to keep the mission going, everything that we did was coming out of our savings account. And I was really missing my son at this point. I can't remember where he was. He might have been at the Naval Air Station in Pensacola at this point, but I was really missing him. I was already, way deep into the running and stuff with the boots. And I came across a pair of his old JROTC BDUs. Boop. I'm like, I'm going to wear those at my next race. Oh, no, you're not, because your son was tiny in high school. I'm like, okay, maybe one leg will fit in those. I looked over and there sat an old sewing machine my mom had given me, and I completely forgot that it was even up there. Then I remembered my dad gave me his unit patch from his time in the Army. The only thing that he kept really, other than his Bible and of course all of his paperwork. So a light bulb went off and I made myself a bracelet out of it. So it was my son's BDUs and my dad's military patch. And then that's when the light bulb went off of, oh my gosh, why don't I, see if some of my buddies have some of their old uniforms, and maybe I can make, some bracelets and sell them online to help offset the cost. And once again, I wasn't looking to start anything. I wasn't looking to do anything. It just was grassroots. It was the universe. It was God. That voice that a lot of us ignore, saying, that intuition saying, do this.
It was that light bulb.
Right. So little did I know Valor Bands, which is now Wearable Gratitude. Valor Bands is a product, which is the bracelets, but Valor Bands was born So similar to how the nonprofit Memories of Honor, we create living, breathing memorials for those that we have lost, which that covers killed in action, missing in action, training accidents, self-infliction, medical issues directly related to service, as well as any loss of life while on active duty. Wearable gratitude is a way for us to continue those stories of service for any veteran, no matter what branch, no matter when they served. And it's pretty cool because each one of the bracelets comes with the story of the service member who wore those uniforms. So now that individual is getting to own a piece of history. I mean, if those uniforms could talk, what stories, even funny ones, like what stories, mischievous ones, I've got a lot of buddies that are veterans, and I've heard a lot of them, but what stories, those could tell. And every little flaw, every little, discoloration, that's all somebody's history. I didn't realize it until I got into it, but there's anywhere between 200 to 250,000 service members separating from service every year. That equates to about 2 million uniforms. And it's like, where are these things going? Eventually, they're going to end up in a landfill. So this way, somebody can own a piece of that service member's story, but now they can tell that story. For example, my daughter-in-law is a sergeant in the Marine Corps. She donated one of her uniforms. And, now when anybody orders one of her uniforms, they get to learn about my daughter-in-law. They get to learn about her service. And just like any of the other donors that we have. So it becomes a conversation piece, and it becomes a way for individuals to non-verbally, in a fashionable way, say thank you for your service.
I'm going to have to tell my husband to send in one of his uniforms, because I've been just putting them in my punching bag, but that seems a lot more useful.
I like that it's in your punching bag, Rihanna. That's hilarious.
Hey, it's getting used at least, but I mean, I'd rather send Amy some.
Wow, that's awesome. It's doing so much because you're also taking out those uniforms from being in a landfill eventually.
Yeah.
You're doing like a lot of things. It's like a really big cycle, and I can see it and I like it.
Yeah. Our saying is recycle, refashion, redeploy. So we're redeploying those uniforms and giving them new life.
That's amazing.
No, I like that a lot. That's a great mantra. Even the guys that are still in, like my husband, I can't tell you how many uniforms he's gone through because they get holes in them, they get beat up, they're trashed. Yeah. And he's very, very particular about his uniform looking how it's supposed to look. So if it gets even like the tiniest hole in it, he's like, no, I can't wear this.
Yeah. And then, it hasn't been a lot of changes, but since I've been doing this, there's been quite a few changes in the camos, like with the Navy, they got rid of their blueberries, the blue uniforms, and now they've gone to a multi-cam. And I'm like, yes, send me okay, my son cannot hear this, although they are a part of the Navy. I love the Navy blueberries. they make the coolest products.
They do.
And I love blue. So, it's, what are you going to do when the branch, the service that you're working for says, we're no longer doing that camo pattern. We're doing something different. Now you've got to get rid of everything. Where's it going to go?
Yeah, exactly. I remember when we found our grandfather was in the Navy and we found his Navy uniform. Even in high school when I was little, there was no way I could get into it. He was like the tiniest person ever. I'm like, I can't even get a leg in this.
Oh my God, I never even saw that. Rude.
Oh, it was tiny.
I've seen the photos.
Did you see? Well, Grandma told the story. She borrowed it to somebody to use for a play, and they never gave it back to her.
Grandma.
Well, and
what were you doing?
She's the nicest soul on the planet, so she won't ask them for it back. She's just like, well, it's gone. I'm like, what? What? That was Grandpa's uniform. Get it back.
Oh, that hurts.
Yeah.
Yeah, she
does. Because I didn't even know it existed, because there's quite a few years between the two of us. So I was like, what? That existed? I only saw the photos.
Yeah, I saw his whites, and they were like the tiniest thing ever. Even
That
when
makes
Luke was his
sense.
skinniest, he wouldn't have fit in. I'm like, he was a little man. I was like, holy crap.
Yeah,
That's
it's
crazy.
pretty cool because for the Valor bands, the bracelets come with the stories, but a lot of times too, we'll get in uniforms in bulk. For example, like my son-in-law was in the Tennessee Guard. He just went to his buddies and brought me garbage bags full. And I was kind of like, oh, thank you, but I don't know who they belong to. Now what are we going to do?
Yeah.
Because that's part of what we do, is making sure that that story gets told. I adapted and said, okay, we're going to make sure that the story still goes with those that we're making the Valor bands, the bracelets out of, but we'll still use these uniforms because they all have a story. We just don't know what it is.
Right.
And started making dog collars. I tell you what, my dog, my smallest dog, I should say my youngest dog is 3. Yeah. He's 3 in April. And that collar is still just as durable, just as, I mean, it needs to be washed, but I mean, these uniforms are made to last. They make
Yeah.
perfect dog collars. So we made dog collars, like these wraps for drinks, because I love ice
Mhm.
cold drinks, but
Yes.
your hand, and I hate koozies, and your hands will start to warm up either the can or the bottle or the glass.
Yeah.
So we have these drink wraps, we make purses, bags,
I
and then
loved the purses. I saw
they
them on your Instagram. I was like, ooh, that's cute.
then we started taking the jackets, some of the jackets, and completely refashioning them, completely changing the way they look. It's been fun.
I'm gonna have to see. My husband lost one of his really good friends. Actually, after he was already out of the Marine Corps, he got murdered on the side of the on a sidewalk in California. But
God.
I have to see if we can get a hold of one of his uniforms to send to you, because I'm sure my husband would absolutely love to have his story be one of your stories.
Yeah, we've had to date, we've had one gold star, one fallen service member. I wouldn't dare ask, if somebody wants to own it, that's a different story. I wouldn't dare ask somebody for their son or daughter's or husband's uniform. But a good friend of mine, he lost his son, and he pulled out what he wanted of his son's uniform and then gave me the rest. It was really hard to take them. It was
Yeah.
really humbling to take them. He wanted other people to know and have a piece of his son. So that year we were at the CMA Fest, the Country Music Association, the CMA
Yeah.
Fest in Nashville, and it's huge week-long event. We had a store set up inside the convention center. It was really cool because we had a special place for Ben's uniforms, and Ben's uniform is in Australia. It's in China. So all these people from all these different countries come in for this event, and they were buying Ben's uniforms and take Canada and taking them back with them. So now Ben's story isn't just a Nashville story. It's not just a Tennessee story. It's not just an American story.
It's everywhere.
His story and his legacy is all across the world.
It's beautiful.
That is, again, as a mom, and knowing the heart of my dear, dear friend, and how hard the loss of his son was, just to be able to tell him Ben's story. Ben's uniform is in Australia, and to be able to take pictures with those individuals that bought his uniform, and to be able to send that to Dennis and say, look,
That's incredible.
that story is going to Canada.
That's so awesome. I love it.
So, what is one important life lesson that you've learned and that you would like to tell our listeners?
Life lesson. My gosh, there's many.
I know. I think it's only one, right?
So I think these kind of go hand in hand, and it may seem cliche and without, like duh, but I've been able to do a lot of really cool stuff in my time here on Earth, and I've had many, many really cool experiences. But I've been able to do a lot of those things because I didn't listen to negative voices, whether they were my own, and that's not to say that I did not at one time listen to them. At one time, I kept myself, and I let other people keep me from walking my path, or doing things that made me happy, or doing things that were healing for me. It's that. It's like, don't listen to the negative voices. Don't listen to those within you, those with outside of you. Don't care about what anybody's thinking, because 9 times out of 10, they probably really aren't thinking about you. It's just our internal voices telling us that we're not good enough and that people are judging. But the biggest thing is, take whatever tragedies you've had, take those things that was brought into your life to break you, and use them to make you stronger. Use them as catalysts, use them as fuel. Refuse. It's okay to get knocked down. It's okay to break down. It's okay to cry. It's okay to even be stuck and to sit in that moment for a while. And sitting in a moment is okay. Don't grow roots there. Had I grown roots there, only God knows what would have happened to me. And I recently lost my father in August. He lived his last 8 months with me. And, I sat with the trauma of watching and being a part of my dad's final moments. And I had to sit with that for a while. And I felt myself starting to get stuck there. And I felt myself starting to plant roots. Don't do it. Get up, get out, find something that's bigger than yourself and go chase it like there's no tomorrow, and use that pain to make somebody else's life better, because in return, it's going to pull you out of those depths and your life's going to change as well.
I love it. That's good advice.
I love helping people get uncomfortable.
I don't think that that's uncomfortable.
Well, no, I mean, it
can be.
So for me, it's all in how you look at it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're just, at one point, it's just, is that word going to be a negative word, or is it going to be a positive word? For me, getting uncomfortable is a positive word, because that means you're getting outside of
your comfort zone,
the confines of self-doubt. Or once you do what was once thought impossible, holy wow, all of a sudden, like me, I didn't learn how to swim till I was 39 years old. Like, I had every reason not to be able to do something. Like, I would panic when I put my face in the water. I got uncomfortable because I had family members, some looking like it wasn't good, and it was all because they all had cancer. And that was the catalyst for me to learn how to swim, which led me to being able to do an Ironman for Sergeant Anthony Peterson, which then led to the creation of Memories of Honor. Imagine if I would have never gotten uncomfortable, and I never got outside of my head, and I never got over my fear of swimming, we would not be having this conversation. So don't run from discomfort, run towards it, because once you do the impossible, everything is possible. Life goes from can or can't to will or won't. Doesn't mean it does not mean it's not going to be a rocky road. Doesn't mean that it's going to be an easy road. It becomes a choice.
Yeah.
And possibilities just are abundant.
I always like the saying that they say, choose your hard. It's hard to not do it, but it's hard to do it. It's hard to be married. It's hard to be divorced. Like, you have to pick your hard.
Absolutely.
Hard.
Run to the discomfort. Embrace it. You ladies have probably heard this with military families, but embrace the suck. It doesn't mean, embrace the
whiny.
Blah, blah, blah. It's, you know what? Acknowledge it, face it, move on.
Yeah.
Whereas I like to say, suck it up, buttercup.
Mine was always suck it up, Nancy. I don't know where I got Nancy from. I'm sure I probably heard it on a movie somewhere at some point, but mine was suck it up, Nancy.
The one thing that they always say in the Marine Corps is semper gumby, which just means be forever flexible, always flexible. So that's what we do.
Yeah, you have to learn that, right? Especially when you're a military wife.
Absolutely. And speaking of being a wife, how are you able to be a wife, a mother, an author, a nonprofit runner, a business runner? How do you do it all? And if you could give any tips to the next generation of entrepreneurs, what would you tell them?
Oh my goodness. Well, I can tell you it's a lot easier now with 2 kids than 6.
I bet.
Yeah.
And kids and kids that, you know, can take care of themselves versus changing diapers. For those of you that are still in that small kid diaper phase or even small kid phase, my hat is off to you, because there is no bigger job raising children. There's no greater joy, but there's no greater job than raising children. So I don't know, you know, I like not chaos. Chaos isn't the right word. I like being busy. I like change. I thrive when the shit gets real. You know,
Nice.
I may not like it at first, but I sometimes, oh God, I almost wish it wasn't this way. I sometimes do my best work when I'm pushed up against a wall. And I think that's what makes an entrepreneur a good entrepreneur, because there is no such thing as failure. If you ever meet an entrepreneur that says they never failed and their first ideation of whatever it is that they were doing worked, you're looking at a liar.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because you have to be flexible. You have to, just like with the military, improvise, adapt, overcome. You have to go, okay, that didn't work, so let's try this. It's just like A/B testing. It's just like, my brain doesn't work like a lot of people's do, as far as, you know, when it comes to like trying out a new tech or something like that, but they're constantly testing, right? That iPhone that you're carrying, or whatever phone it is that you have, that was not the first version.
Yeah.
So don't expect to come out with whatever your product is, whatever your service is, and expect it to be perfect. And don't let perfection, or the lack thereof, stop you from pursuing it, because you will never get started, because the perfect thing doesn't exist until it exists. The light bulb, how many thousands of times did that go through ideations before it worked? We're on a Zoom right now. This did not happen the first time that they ran the code. This was years of testing and revamping, and even the fact that we're able to talk right now, I don't say post-COVID, but at the beginning of COVID, think about how bad Zoom meetings and stuff were, because everybody was getting online and all the services were getting plugged up. Well, they adapted, they overcame, and now we're able to talk free of distractions other than my dog's barking.
That's definitely valuable advice, because I feel like I'm going through that right now. Because Amy, we've talked about it before. Like I'm trying to get a nonprofit on the ground and off the ground, and it's going so much slower than I want it to. But I have to constantly remind myself it's still moving, it's still happening. It's just taking longer, which is okay, and we haven't given up on it, which is all that really matters. But I might need your help with some 501c3 application if you're willing to help me.
Yes, and I will actually show you what I used
Yes, please.
to do mine, because I didn't just go, oh, I know how to do this. That's the other thing about being an entrepreneur, right? You've got to be willing to do the hard work. You got to be willing to do the research and roll up your sleeves, because nobody else is going to do it for you. Nobody's going to love your baby as much as you do.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to understand it at first. And when people come and ask you questions, don't take it personally. Oh my goodness, that is probably the biggest thing. Don't take questions personally, because a lot of times when they're asking you questions, you will actually find things that you missed, that you forgot about. Even like with the 501c3, I didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea. And I couldn't afford an attorney. I mean, that was going to be thousands of dollars, because they like to get paid. So, I did my research. I found an online thing that I could go through, and I literally had 2 screens up. One where I was watching the class, where they were taking me step by step. And I'm sorry, I had 2 screens plus my laptop. And then I was actually physically filling out the paperwork online while she was talking. And then I would stop, and then I would go back to work. Within 3 weeks, we had our letter, which is unheard of.
Wow, I was going to say that's a really fast, unless you file an easy form, because those come faster. But yeah, when you do a regular 501c3, it doesn't come that fast. That's awesome.
Yeah, we got it within 3 weeks. And I had heard horror stories about getting it.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to need that program because that sounds exactly what I need because it's so intimidating and I'm not one that's afraid to bootstrap either. We bootstrapped this podcast. We had no idea what we were doing. We had no idea how to edit it or do any of it and we're just like, let's do it.
Figure it out.
That's when the best things come about. And when you guys listened to whatever that voice was, whatever that intuition was, I say that voice when an idea pops in your head.
Yep.
Like a lot of times people will ignore that.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, yeah, it can be distracting if you're a creative like I am and you're constantly having all these creative ideas. Yeah, you shouldn't chase every idea you have because then you're going to, be chasing squirrels all day long. If an idea comes to you and it doesn't go away and it keeps coming back around, that's when you know, or when you hear somebody talk about a pain point and your idea fills that pain point, grab your pack and run like Hades, because that's probably the path you're supposed to be going down. But also know, and I've seen a lot of other entrepreneurs as I was going through the Nashville Entrepreneur Center, what they ended up launching was nothing like what they started.
Mm-hmm.
But what they learned through that process got them to where they needed to be. So imagine if they just said, oh, well, this didn't work. They wouldn't have what they have now. Same thing with Memories of Honor. Again, I didn't intentionally start this, but I ran with it and I kept listening to my gut, to my little crazy voices in my head. Sometimes those voices are pretty smart.
And lucky for me and Rietta, when we started why we started the podcast was we kept on talking like, oh my God, our family stories, they're so crazy and nobody can pick the same story. Wouldn't it be hilarious if we had like a podcast? And it just never went away. And it just kind of evolved into this. And here we are.
And here we are. Now we're interviewing amazing people with amazing stories, and it's very heartfelt.
That's awesome. I think it's great that you guys are doing this together. Well, I applaud you guys. I mean, it's not easy work. I had thought, oh, well, maybe because we've got so many amazing stories, maybe I'll do a podcast. And I'm like, who am I kidding? I don't have that kind of time. I don't have, all the front end work and then all the pre-production, the production, the post-production. And I'm like, well, maybe I should just go back into radio because then I can just pot up a mic and let it go.
There you go. That'd be a lot easier.
I've got to thank you for the therapy session. You'll have to tell me where to Venmo the money.
We're free.
We're gonna have to add that to the resume, though.
You're right in my budget. I love
Anytime. The fee is now everything that you say will be aired and people can listen to it. So it's kind of a give and take.
I love it.
What is the most challenging thing you've overcome and how did you do it?
Oh God.
Because I'm guessing there's a lot by the look on your face.
Looks is 1,000 words, right?
Yep.
I mean, she's got 6 kids, so I mean,
It's rough.
There were some points too where I was a single mom and with kids. I think that was part of it. And I think I covered the other part. I would really say that the most challenging thing I ever faced was, signing my son over to the Marine Corps. But prior to that, learning how to swim at 39 changed my life, rocked my world. It wasn't easy, but to be able to go from not being able to put your face in the water to be able to swim over 2 miles in open water in a river.
It's impressive.
Holy cow. You never know who you're inspiring by what might look like setbacks and what might look like failure. Mm-hmm. So that's something that I would really tell people, as well as you don't know who you're inspiring. You don't know who's watching. And when I learned how to swim, it gave a lot of people courage to go out and do whatever that thing was that was scaring them. When I would have a setback with my training, people came out of the woodwork and going, hey, I went through something similar and I was afraid to tell anybody. or, I didn't finish a race and I never spoke a word about it, where I was very vocal and very open and honest about my setbacks, my failures, because failures aren't failures. Yeah, it seems weird to go, oh, I learned how to swim and that was the biggest pivot point in my life. But it was, because I did something that I was petrified of doing.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the Oprah effect. I don't know if you've ever heard that term or not. The running industry hit an all-time high with women running after Oprah ran the New York City Marathon. Because damn it, if Oprah Winfrey can run a marathon,
So
can.
can I.
And that is where, by being open and honest about what you're going through, and instead of going, oh, everything's great, I'm doing awesome. No, tell your story, share your story, because people will learn more and get more out of things that are hurting you. You were talking about Instagram, Facebook, everybody puts on this facade. And everybody looks like they live in these beautiful bubbles. And that shit ain't real. Like they've got skeletons in their closet just like we do. They've they may be going through a divorce. You don't know what kind of crap is going on. But when you can have the courage to go, man, I had a crappy day. I'm going through this divorce. For me, it was, the last one was, I kept a lot of what was happening with my father close to my chest, and I shut down and I didn't let anybody in. That's the first time that I wasn't like open and honest with people. I shut down and I completely closed off from everybody. After I got out of that place of almost planting roots, I opened up to people and I said, look, fell into deep depression. I had PTSD. I was constantly stuff that was bringing back trauma. I went on a drinking binge for 4 months every night, to the point where I couldn't see straight. I didn't stay there, but by being open and honest, it was like, look, I'm not this person that you may perceive. Like, I've got shit in my closet. But, by sharing that, you don't know who else needs to hear it, because they may be looking at you going, she's got it together, or he's got it together. We need to know that we're not alone in our time of need. So yeah, that's the story. I'm learning to find my happy again. I lost it.
And you're coming back.
I'm coming back, baby.
And we're glad you're here and that you came and you talked to us about it and talked to our listeners about it. And we are here to support you and love you. And
thank you. Well, and if
anybody, be your therapists.
Yeah.
Hand over the money.
Hey, you said you were free.
Damn it.
We got it on audio. But too, if anybody wants to, I'm terrible about responding just because I'm so busy, and it's not like, oh, I'm too busy to respond. It's just being honest. But if anybody is going through something, if anything that I said hits a note or resonates, I'm happy to be a support system from afar, because we weren't meant to walk this life alone.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Yeah,
that's a beautiful end note right there. It's just a lovely little flower. This is how to do. And we were with the lovely Amy Cotta, and this is how to do when shit gets real. And check us out on all of the socials, and hit us up. Every episode's out new on Friday. And don't forget to listen and tell your friends about us, and have a great day.